Angle relationships in circles. If a tangent and a secant or chord intersect on a circle at the point of tangency, then the measure of the angle formed is half the measure of the intercepted arc. So what this is saying is the measure of angle ABC, this angle right here, is going to be half of the measure of the arc that it intersects. In this case, the arc is AB. If two secants or chords intersect in the interior of a circle, then the measure of the angle formed is half the sum of the measures of its intercepted arcs. So these two chords are intersecting inside this circle. The measure of angle 1, right here, is going to equal half of the sum of the arcs. So if I add the measure of arc AD plus the measure of arc BC and multiply by a half, I'll get the measure of that angle. So let's find each measure. The measure of angle FGH. Well, the measure of angle FGH is going to use the first theorem, which says that the angle is going to equal to half the arc. So if my arc is 216, then 1/2 times 216 is going to equal 108. This one is very similar. This time, though, we're given the measure of the angle, which is 64, and we're going to try to find the measure of the arc, LM. So the measure of the angle is half the measure of the arc. So in this case, since we're finding the measure of the arc, we're going to have to multiply it by 2. So the measure of arc LM is equal to 2 times 64, which is 128. Number 3, the measure of JML. That's what we're trying to find, JML. Okay, so that means I need to add the two arcs and then multiply by a half. So JL is 70 and KN is 52. So the measure of angle LMJ is equal to 1/2 of 70 plus 52. 70 plus 52 is 112. Half of 112 is equal to 61. I'm sorry, let's see, I did get that right, but 70 plus 52, let me try to do this in my head, 122, that's what I meant. Half of 122 is 61. And number 4, the measure of angle STR. So from S to T to R, that's this angle. I need to add the two arcs, SR and QU, and then multiply by half. So measure of angle STR is equal to 1/2 of 107 plus 99. And let's see, 107 and 99. (206), and if I cut that in half, that's going to give me 103 degrees. If two segments intersect in the exterior of a circle, then the measure of the angle formed is half the difference of the measures of its intercepted arcs. Okay, so this angle here, 1/2, to find that, we subtract the arcs, and you're always taking the big arc minus the little arc, and that's because we're always going to have a positive measure. So arc AD minus arc BD, and then multiply by a half. We'll do the same thing in the middle when we have two tangents. So we're going to take arc EHG, and we're going to subtract the measure of arc EG, and then multiply by a half. And in the last example, take the larger arc. When we have two secants, JN, we're going to subtract the smaller arc, KM, and then multiply by half. All right, so in problem 5, Here's our larger arc, 140. We're going to subtract the measure of the smaller arc, 74, and then cut it in half. So 140 minus 74 is going to give me, let's see, 66. And if I cut that in half, 1/2 of 66 is going to give me 33 degrees. And that's going to be the measure of this angle on the exterior of the circle, SRU, or just this measure of angle X. Okay, let's do the same thing with the next one. The larger arc minus the smaller arc, we're going to cut that in half, and that's going to give us the measure of this guy. Well, I'm not given a measure of this smaller arc, but I can see that these are two tangents, so I'm going to find the difference, 360 minus 232. So 360 minus 232 is 128. All right, so that's the measure of this arc here. So now let's subtract 232 minus 128 is 104. And if I take half of that, half of 104, that's going to give me 52. Okay, in problem number 7, I've got two secants. I'm going to take the larger arc minus the smaller and then cut it in half. So 75 minus 29 46. If I cut that in half, that's going to give me 23. And last problem, the larger arc, we have again two secants, 108. We're going to subtract the smaller arc, which is this time the x, and it's going to equal, we're going to multiply that by a half, and that's going to equal 35. So this time we're going to have to set up an equation. So let's see, 1/2 of 108 minus x, that's going to equal 35. So when we're solving for x this time, I would multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 1/2, or 2/1. On the left side, that'll cancel the 1/2, so I have 108 minus x, and 35 times 2/1, or just 35 times 2, is 70. If I subtract 108, let's see, 108 minus 70, that's going to give me negative 38. So negative x is equal to negative 38. If I divide both sides by a negative, x